Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we are here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields.
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
Gentlemen,
hello.
We have finally arrived at the tribute episode for Blink-182 that we've been planning for 181 consecutive podcasts. So
it was literally, we've worked the entire time just to get to this moment. That's what we've been building up to.
Yeah, the whole rest of the podcast, I don't know, 250 hours or something, has just been a ruse, a decoy to get us to this tribute for Blink-182, and I will name some of their songs now.
Please do. Please. I'm sure.
I wanted to make a Blink-182 joke, and I'm like, I don't know any of their songs.
I don't know any songs. So it's going to be a really weird episode because we don't know anything about Blink-182.
I don't know anything about Blink-182 because I'm old and I have taste.
Yeah. Oh. Well, here's what I do know about them. They were the headliner for the Fire Festival until they weren't.
Yeah, that's a true thing.
Oh my God, do you guys remember the Fire Festival?
Simpler times.
I can't wait till they bring that back. I'm totally going.
That documentary was the Schadenfreude my weary heart needed. It was so
yes,
great.
Indeed.
So anyway, we got a fun show that is not about Blink-182 or the Fire Festival, but other subjects that are equally silly. So I'm going to talk about the dinosaurs and what they left us for as far as domestic usability.
Yeah, indeed.
And then I'm gonna do a little movie review, so to speak, but it's also a chance for me to brag, which I'm gonna take.
Let him have it.
You don't get many of those, so so we'll give you this one. And I am going to pinch Mark and Doug for not wearing green.
Yee! I'm literally wearing green right now. You can't pinch me.
Well, I can't. We're also separated geographically. So
if I had pants on, they'd be green.
Something's green. So anyway, with that disgusting reference, let us go ahead and do a show.
Tally-hoo!
Uncle Dan.
Wow, he has really been stressed out this past year.
It was a really scary dinosaur noise I just made.
Was that a dinosaur noise?
I don't know. It wasn't.
We don't know.
I mean, look, you can't prove that it's not.
I thought it was a Sasquatch.
That's true. And we don't know what dinosaurs sound like, but according to Jurassic Park 3, they speak English.
Oh, it's very exciting.
What?
Yeah. Did you ever see that movie?
I don't know. Maybe
it's terrible. He has a dream sequence where one of the dinosaurs calls his name, and it's just like, oh my God,
weird.
Yeah, super
weird.
Weird.
They did evolve into birds, and some birds can say words. So there you go.
Ipso facto.
Boom.
Proof.
Yeah.
Talking dinos.
Well, we're here at Dino Talk. We're gonna delve into the ever evolving field of dinosaurs. Uncle Mark, please help me.
Well, and I'll get there. So this week I was just minding my own damn business like I do. And I saw a tweet from our friend Hemant Mehta over at The Friendly Atheist, and I'm sure everybody here knows who Hemant is. He's a nice guy. He's a good-natured debunker of supernaturalist hooey and bullshit generally. But he has, of recent, gotten into a back-and-forth heated dialogue kind of frenemy-ship with evangelical pastor Greg Locke. Do you guys know this guy?
Oh, yeah.
Don't know Greg Locke.
He is a treat. Go ahead. He's one of the guys that was like, Trump's going to win no matter what. And then even after he lost, Trump's still going to win, you'll see. And then after the insurrection happened and nothing happened, Trump's still going to win, you'll see. And then now he's gotten a lot quieter about that.
He got a little bit quiet. But if you don't know who he is, he's the meticulously groomed, not closet case metrosexual who is perpetually 3 heartbeats away from a rage-induced segment elevation myocardial infraction. He's the COVID-denying, Trump-worshipping, election-denying, Capitol attack was an Antifa false flag claiming, anti-masker pig, of the Global Vision Bible Church out there on Old Lebanon Dirt Road in Juliet, Tennessee. That's really the address. You know the place?
Yeah.
So
he absolutely looks like he's a member of Doctor Strange's, whatever cabal of wizards.
Yeah, he's very, very carefully groomed. So let me first tell you what Hammett tweeted about. Then I'll tell you how Reverend Aneurysm of the Holy Sepulchre of White Male Privilege responded. Hammett tweeted out a link to an article in the March 9th Orange Leader newspaper in Texas, wherein a nice church lady named Karen, because of course, Karen Stevens, wrote that she is quite certain that man and dinosaurs lived contemporaneously on this just 6,000-year-old Earth. And Earth's so young it still has that new planet smell. Now, we all know this claim is nothing new. Ken Ham went $100 million in debt, making the world's emptiest tourist attraction built around this whole laughably stupid conceit. You can hear us have a real hoot about our in-person visit to the Ark and its equally brain-ruining sister attraction, the Creation Museum, in episode 83, complete with the world premiere of Ray Comfort's movie, whose name I've forgotten.
Banana Man.
Oh, it was Banana Man, that's right. And then we actually had Sundays.
Yeah.
Didn't we?
We had banana splits. They were terrible.
Terrible. Oh, there was
really
like that
bad.
pineapple shit in it.
Honestly, how do you fuck up a banana split? I don't understand it. That was the one thing I was looking forward to in the whole trip, and he messed it up.
Yeah, the one free thing we got out of it. So anyway, this tired bullshit is almost too silly to bother with, but let's bother with it a bit. In her article in the Texas Orange Leader, Sister Karen Stevens says the following. I believe that dinosaurs walked this earth, but not 140 million years ago, like the scientists claim. Nearly a third of Texans believe humans and dinosaurs roamed the earth at the same time, according to a 2010 University of Texas Tribune poll.
She's saying that in the wrong way. She's proud of that.
She's very proud of it. The question was asked, did humans live at the same time as dinosaurs? 3 in 10 Texas voters agree that they did live at the same time. 41%.
Well, they can't be wrong.
So just
3 in 10?
If people believe things, it must be. 41% disagree, and 30% don't know.
Oh, my God.
Evangelical Christians make up approximately 25% of the U.S. population. A majority of them think the Bible should be read literally and that evolution is false. Okay, super. She goes on to cite some of her research. Get ready to write down some important journals here, guys. Most people are not refuting the fact that there were dinosaurs, but they refute the fact that they didn't live with humans. I recently watched a video on dinosaurs, and a school teacher of science was the one sharing the facts. But this science teacher got it right. He stated that dinosaurs walked the earth with man. How else would they know what pictures to draw on cave walls that look exactly like dinosaurs? They have found drawings of woolly mammoths, triceratops, and men drawn together fighting. You guys, she watched a video.
She watched him. It was a teacher.
Yeah, a teacher of science.
They're not allowed to be wrong. It's against the law.
Citation YouTube. Well, Karen has half a point here. No one, not even scientists, are disputing that man and mammoths existed at the same time. In fact, man, that being us, is credited with hunting these magnificent beasts into extinction because we are the fucking worst.
Go us! Yes, we're number one!
And mammoths lived quite recently as the geological timescale crow flies, having died out less than 4,000 years ago. So a cave painting showing men and mammoths together comes as no surprise. The Triceratops, she cites, however, died off 66 million years ago. If you're keeping track at home, that is 11,000 times longer ago than the Earth was created, according to Karen. And the cave painting Triceratops, the video she seems to be citing as proof, has been shown to be a cluster of animals that an untrained observer passing by on horseback could just maybe think was a dinosaur if it was dark enough. Well, the good Pastor Locke, near horse from endless wine shouting, snapped back at Hammett on Twitter saying, "Yaha, dinosaurs and man did live together, and if stupid Hammett would pay attention to the Bible rather than criticizing it," quick note, criticizing a thing is literally paying attention to it, "then he would know it was true. So I don't want to waste a ton of time on this caca, but what, if anything, does the Bible say about dinosaurs, other than absolutely fucking nothing? Well, there are a couple passages that the Karens and Pastor Locks of the world Think describe them in detail like a technical manual. First, Isaiah 11, 6 through 7. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox.
And the dish ran away with the spoon. Is that how that goes?
This is the idea of heaven, which they somehow interpret to be a return to the pre-fall days of Adam, when there was no death nor animals that killed or ate meat, despite there being lions and tigers and bears and shit. Ipso facto, giant dinosaurs could be herbivores, I guess. That's almost too much proof, if you ask me. So next, that wonderful book for children, Job 40, 15 through 24. Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and which is true of what they say of Uncle Doug as well. And his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like the beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. Surely the mountains yield food for him, and all the beasts of the field play here. He lies under the lotus trees in a covert of reeds and marsh. The lotus trees cover him with their shade. The willows by the brook surround him. Indeed, the river may rage, yet he is not disturbed. He is confident. Though the Jordan gushes into his mouth, though he takes it in his eyes, or one pierces his nose with a snare.
I think Job is in love with the behemoth.
That is definitely a love letter to the behemoth.
It does sound kind of sexy. It sounds nice.
And again, Job 41. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? Can you put a reed through his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? I will not conceal his limbs, his mighty power, or his graceful proportions. Who can remove his outer coat? Who can approach him? What? Who can approach him with a double bridle? Who can open up the doors of his face with his terrible teeth all around? Who can open up the doors of his face? Indeed, you guys.
I've often wondered that. Who could do that?
His rows of scales are his pride, shut up tightly as with a seal. One is so near another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They stick together and cannot be parted. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lights. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke goes out of his nostrils as from a boiling pot, and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth. Strength dwells in his neck, and sorrow dances before him. The folds of his flesh are joined together. They are firm on him and cannot be moved. His heart is as hard as a stone, even as hard as the lower millstone. When he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid. Because of his crashings, they are beside themselves. Though the sword reaches him, it cannot avail, nor does spear, dart, or javelin. He regards iron as straw, and bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Slingstones become like stubble to him. Darts are regarded as straw. Okay. It just goes on and on and on and on.
We get it. It's Smaug. I get it.
Oh my gosh, just like every other ancient society in the world, the people of the ancient Near East had a bestiary of mythical animals based on already fearsome beasts around them like crocodiles, whales, hippos, rhinos, elephants, etc. Proof, motherfuckers. See Hammett, pay attention to the Bible.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's laugh past this here. Proof provided by Karen, her video, Pastor, I'm not in the closet, I'm just fucking furious all the time because white Christian men are the most put upon minority group in America, Locke, and his totally real Israelite field guide to the beasts of the Jurassic period. Now, as you fellas know, I love me some primitivism. I'm fascinated by our beginnings as a species and as distinct protocultures. That's kind of part of why religion fascinates me. One of my favorite art objects ever is the Venus of Willendorf, which is a female fetish figure from what is now Austria, made approximately 25,000 years ago, which is just over 4 times the age of the entire Earth, according to Karen and Pastor Locke. While the Venus is made of stone, many items like her from all over the planet are made of bone. Countless treasures of our prehistory and far more recent history are made out of animal bone and its much harder, much denser cousin, ivory, which is the tusk and the horn and the tooth of a variety of animals. The material palette of primitive humanity was a kind of a limited one. There was stone, there was wood, reeds and other plant fibers, leather from animal skin, maybe some shells, some useful big leaves in a limited number of places, assorted muds, and that was about it. So one of the most valuable materials in the primitive world was bone. It was hard, it's durable, it's relatively lightweight, it doesn't burn easy, and could be shaped and sharpened into a vast number of critically important items, like spear and arrow tips, knives, scrapers, handles, needles, fish hooks, awls, hoes, buttons, hasps, harpoons, belt buckles, toys, currency, musical instruments, and countless art objects from around the world. The bodies of our ancestors...
And they're good for gnawing on.
They're real good to give a dog. The bodies of our ancestors have been unearthed in every corner of the world, adorned with bone, jewelry, and beading. I found several examples around the world of whale bones being used for shelter structure. Some structures called karmok were built by the northern Canadian Inuit using whale bones as structure as recently as the 1950s. Wow. So you get the idea. Before the development of metals, bone was the shit. It was of enormous utility and value. Okay, in 2014, archaeologists in Russia discovered the largest ever mammoth house. I say largest ever because several had already been found. These are round structures between 22 and 25,000 years old, made entirely out of mammoth bones. You should look them up, mammoth houses. They're pretty fucking metal. Mammoth houses are where the sexy barbarians in Frank Frazetta's album covers surely live, right? Tusks and long bones create kind of a dome shape, and upside-down lower jaws of mammoths are stacked into each other like cups to fill in the wall cavities like ice blocks in an igloo, right? While the roof is made of interlacing shoulder blades, the entry is arches of two huge tusks. The whole structure was then covered with layers of tanned mammoth hide, creating a super solid, waterproof house made out of arrow and spear-proof bone and yards of leather tarps, all provided by the once abundant mammoths. In 2013, another group of scientists in Russia unearthed Buttercup, a semi-rotten, semi-eaten, but still largely intact female woolly mammoth who died 40,000 years ago. She's not a fossil, she's a corpse that a heating planet released from its permafrost. She has skin, hair, organs, etc. Fully identifiable food was found in her still gooey intestine. When they pulled her out, rotten blood oozed out of her, and one researcher dared eat a tiny bit of her still extant muscle tissue. And remember, Buttercup died 34,000 years before Karen Stevens of the Texas Orange Leader and Pastor Greg Locke think the entire universe came into existence. And we could still tan her hide for clothing and make weapons from her tusks today in 2021 if we wanted.
And eat her.
And eat her. And given that Buttercup is not even the first prehistoric animal corpse who lived in the time of man and the Siberian mud has yielded, and given Karen and Pastor Locke's insistence that the megamorphs of the age of dinosaurs lived tens of thousands of years more recently than Buttercup, and given the evidence that our ancestors saw bone as the plastic of their age, where is it?
Yeah.
Where is all the amazing shit the body of an Argentinosaurus would have yielded? The largest land animal ever found, this creature the Bible so accurately describes, is 6 times the mass of the biggest mammoths. She could imprison a modern elephant within her rib cage. Her femurs, while short, are of giant size and are as big as modern canoes. Those would have made fine columns to support any house. And with, 4 to 5 times the skin surface area of a mammoth, can you imagine how useful 2,000 square feet of tanned, waterproof, thick-ass hide like that would be?
Yeah.
Where is the clothing? Where are the boots and the leather goods made from that acreage of rhino-like skin? Where are the spears? with giant meat-eater teeth? Where are the houses arched with ribs bigger than those of modern whales? Where are the shields and armor pieces made from those prehistoric living army tanks like the, I'm going to kill this, Barrio La Pelta Mark Michelli, recently discovered in Canada, or the Ankylosaurus, the little bony-backed fuckers? The bony armored hide of their almost impenetrable backs could change the course of history had one tribe been protected by it and another not. We all know the stories of how a clan of the indigenous Americans of the Great Plains could survive off a single buffalo kill for a long time. A big buffalo is over 2,000 pounds. The Argentinosaurus weighed 100 times that much.
Jesus.
Can you imagine the value of tens of thousands of pounds of meat in the shit-poor desert economies of the Bible, a time and place where people were desperate not to lose track of a single 80-pound sheep because that was a year's income? And we're to believe that people could fell one dinosaur with 80,000 pounds of edible protein, a city block of tough-ass leather, and enough bone to make the tips of 1,000,000 spears. And other than some weird ramblings in Isaiah and Job, nobody anywhere ever bothered to mention it. Karen Stevens of the Orange Texas Leader and the very secure in his toxic American manhood, Pastor Greg Locke, both Isaiah and Job are in the part of the Bible that they stole from the Jews, the Old Testament. And one of the ancient practices of the Jews that those assholes like to drag out in their awful Judeo-Christian nationalist bullshit is playing the shofar, a musical instrument made from the horn of a ram. If ancient Israelites had lived alongside the absurd profusion of animal life that was the 160 million years that the several epochs of dinosaur life on Earth, would they have chosen the humble horn of the sheep or the goat for their devotional toots with such magnificent horns and spikes from the dinosaurs to choose from?
I feel like you're underestimating the ability, the work that it would take to fell one of these large creatures. But okay, I'll go with you.
But it could be done.
But they die of old age. I mean, they don't live forever, right?
That's true.
And then you just eat it.
One
then
collapses.
You just pick up the horn.
It's roadkill.
Of the Alpenhornosaurus. And
So there is a reason there are no dinosaur bone buttons or flutes or Swiss mountain horns or porch posts or dugout canoes or ornamental cavalry forts or war hammers or surfboards or breastplates, Karen Stevens of the Texas Orange Leader and pitiful rage pastor Gregory Locke. May I call you Gregory? The reason is you're wrong. You're wrong because you're either stupid or you're lying. But in any case, you're wrong. I guess both of these things can be true.
Yeah.
But you're wrong. Dinosaurs are not in the Bible. A book that could only benefit if there were. Right?
Yeah.
It would prove it had some truth to it. Meaning it would have gotten one single thing right. And the megamorphs that went extinct 65 million years ago, 11,000 times the age of the earth you cast your pitiable shadow on even today, did not live next to man. And I'm not just trying to be mean here, just maybe a little bit, especially to Locke, who is an absurd caricature of literally everything wrong with America in a suspiciously tailored jacket. Physically modern humanity and the giants of the age of the dinosaurs living side by side in the last 6,000 years may be the most audacious and stupendously seismic truth claim religion has ever made. And so far, it is totally unsupported by a single shred of hard evidence. So let's see it, Karen Stevens and Greg Locke. And no, Dungeons & Dragons monsters out of the Bible do not count as hard evidence until y'all can turn up a single axe head made out of a stegosaurus thingy or a weapon adorned with velociraptor claws or a single button made of a plesiosaur. You're full of shit. So that was my rant about the dinosaurs, guys.
There you go.
That's a great point. I mean, and you think about, there wasn't just one Argentinosaurus. It was a species.
Yeah.
Right?
There were thousands at least.
Thousands, millions. And these sauropods, they include the Brontosaurus and Brachiosaurus. You're right. The world would be lousy with their corpses and bones.
Where's the stuff?
If they were only 6,000 years ago.
We have uncovered millions of pieces of bone that different groups of humanity have worked into useful implements and decoration, right? Well, surely the biggest bones on Earth would make the biggest things. Where are they?
I know that you're on the hunt for the biggest bones on earth, but I think that that was the whole joke. I couldn't actually make it work. I'm just
so there you
go.
Got
lost. I will say this, Pastor Greg. I just looked at. I was looking at his Twitter feed right now, and he posted an image of his quote unquote church. Did you know that it's a big top tent?
Well, he was forced into that, right, by COVID.
But he's got this circus tent, and it's literally a circus tent with red and white stripes. Like, it's literally a circus. I think that's hilarious.
It is a fucking circus. So anyway, that's enough of that. It's bullshit.
Yeah, all right. Great.
All right, moving on.
Hey, Uncle Mark.
Yeah, shoot, man.
Having been locked up in our homes for all this time, I don't know if you know this. I personally, and you may too, I have a device in my house called a television.
Tell me more about this insane apparat.
It utilizes the moving pictures.
Yeah.
And boy, howdy, I've been using the shit out of that thing.
Yeah, I'm surprised my TV just hasn't worn out.
Yeah.
Like an old shoe.
Yeah, exactly.
After a year in quarantine, that old question of what you would grab and if your house is on fire, I think has been answered for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, I need to take
Netflix. I will grab Netflix.
I need to take my TV to get resold.
Yeah. And speaking of Netflix, the number 2, I believe, thing on Netflix right now is something Doug's going to tell us about.
That's right. Well, dear uncles, we are but 3 lowly podcasters shouting inanities into the void once a week. And to my continued astonishment, there are people out there who not only listen to this drivel, but enjoy it. So,
suckers!
I know. What is up with you? So when we sink our or tink our teeth or sink our teeth into meteor subjects, it may surprise our listeners that we sometimes put effort and thought into our segments. I don't often get to do victory laps, so I'm going to take the opportunity when it presents itself. A couple of weeks ago, Netflix released a 3-part documentary series on Mark Hoffman called Murder Among the Mormons, directed by Jared Hess and Taylor Meeson.
Tyler.
I'm so sorry, Tyler Meeson. I actually know him. I should get his name right. And like Uncle Dan said, it's doing quite well on Netflix. Longtime listeners will remember, however, that completely unrelated to the Netflix series, we did a deep dive into Mark Hoffman back in episode 136.
Yeah.
So when I heard about the series...
Scooped him.
Yeah, absolutely. When I heard about the series, I was both excited and nervous. Excited because I find the story endlessly fascinating, and nervous because I was sure I was about to get upstaged and embarrassed for my take on the saga. Here's the thing. I did like the series. I think it was very well done, well constructed and compelling, but, and this is what I want to talk about today, I really believe that we did a better, more thorough job of tackling this subject, which is a little strange because our segment was 38 minutes, while the series was 3 50-minute episodes. So you'd think that extended runtime would afford the filmmakers enough space to flesh out more context into this story, because in this story, context is everything.
Right.
Yeah,
I will say this, though. What you missed, and I think they really nailed, was footage of 1980s Salt Lake City.
I agree.
So I feel like you did a much poorer job of that.
And you never mentioned Mark Hoffman's sweet-ass Toyota sports car.
That's true.
Right?
I was showing a lot of that footage in my segment, but I don't know if you know this. This is an audio medium, so
man.
It was a lot of wasted time on my part. So let's talk a bit about some of the context and stuff that didn't make it into this, because I think it's pretty fascinating stuff. And they, in some cases, left it out. In some cases, kind of glossed over it. So before we get going, and because no 38-minute podcast or 3-part docuseries could ever really get all of the context of this story, I will re-recommend Robert Lindsay's A Gathering of Saints, which is the definitive work on the Hoffman saga. And I'm sure the filmmakers borrowed heavily from that superb book. And so just a very, very minimal recap of the Hoffman story for those who didn't hear that episode or haven't watched it, and I'm going to keep it short. In Salt Lake City in 1985, Mark Hoffman, possibly the greatest forger in history, was on the verge of being discovered, so he killed 2 people with pipe bombs to try and buy himself some time, and then he blew up his own car with him in it. That's basically the story. with a lot more context, obviously. I do want to repeat this disclaimer for episode 136. Although Hoffman's forgeries were astounding, were and are, his techniques are next level, and his ability to separate fools from their money is unparalleled. Please do not mistake those truths for any kind of admiration or respect.
Or an endorsement.
Of course not. Yeah, Mark Hoffman was a liar and deceiver.
And a murderer.
And who stole tens of thousands of dollars from people that loved him, that he knew, therefore threatening their families and their livelihoods. And of course, like you said, Uncle Mark, he became a cold-blooded murderer who blew to pieces two innocent people for no other reason than to buy himself a couple days. He is a piece of shit.
He was also in a few pieces.
That's true. He did blow himself up unsuccessfully. So yeah, he's a piece of shit. I don't want anyone to think that I think anything differently. And before we get going, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to dunk on the filmmakers or trash their work. Like I said, I really liked it. I've watched it twice. I happen to know Tyler, and Mark, I think you know Jared, or have you?
Not well.
Okay.
It's been a long time, but I'm acquainted with Jared, yeah.
Yeah, they're good guys.
Yeah.
If you don't know Hess's work, he directed Napoleon Dynamite and Nacho Libre, among other films.
Which makes him totally the right guy for a true crime documentary.
Yeah, it's a huge left turn.
There may be I don't know that there's anyone who kind of understands the subtleties of Mormon culture better than Jared S. Though.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah, and there are some uncomfortable moments in Napoleon Dynamite that are a little too reminiscent of, our childhood or things we were familiar with.
My husband doesn't like it. He can't watch it because it said it was like a documentary about growing up in rural Idaho.
Hess is a Mormon, but that in no way means that as a filmmaker, he's not capable of tackling a subject that is less than kind to the Mormon Church. However, some of the lack of context left that taste in my mouth, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So let's start off with what I think they did very well. The production is slick and handsome. It's very watchable and engaging. I think the reenactments were very well done. The amount of archival footage they got was astounding. Like you said, Uncle Dan, just tons and tons of footage from the time and place. A lot of work went into the series, and it shows. Having so many of the players in this drama interviewed was very interesting. They scored interviews with great characters like local hero Ken Sanders, local weirdo Rod Decker, and colorful and pivotal characters in the story itself like Brent Ashworth, Kurt Bench, Alvin Rust, Brent Metcalf, and of course, Shannon Flynn.
Shannon Flynn was amazing in that movie.
He was such an interesting guy, wasn't he?
I mean, I never heard of him before, which is weird because both my parents were church historians at the time, and so I had brushed sort of knees with a few of these people, but Shannon, the man who shows up to the interview in a 3-piece suit with a watch chain across his belly and then ends up talking about that time he owned an Uzi. That's a compelling character for me.
Yeah, he was very fascinating. I really don't know anything about him, but now I'm very interested.
Yeah, and he was kind of I'm calling him a bagman for Hoffman's not right. He helped Hoffman do what he was doing, unaware front to back that he was being duped, and he took a rap for it. Like, he got arrested.
Yeah.
And it turns out he had nothing to do with the forgeries or the murders. And they got interviews with some very tragic characters like Hoffman's ex-wife Dory Hoffman, who is so you really can't help but feel terribly, terribly bad for what she must have gone through in the context of all this. Hearing these people recount their experiences in their own words was very interesting, and it really personalized the story. And then chillingly, in the third episode, you have the recorded voice of Hoffman himself dispassionately describing his forgeries and the murders. So that was pretty chilling and scary.
Yeah.
The series, especially in episode 1, correctly focuses on the White Salamander letter quite a bit, which was a forgery supposed to be written by a friend of Joseph Smith, Martin Harris. The letter describes Joseph's account of his spiritual guide being a white salamander, and goes on to describe that Joseph was involved in black magic and necromancy. So this is where I have my first criticism. Although it is discussed that this document could have been, was, and continues to be embarrassing for the church, there's not a lot of real discussion as to why, and why the church leaders were so apt to believe it.
Right.
Here's where I think the filmmakers kind of pulled their punches a little bit. Finding out that the founder of your religion had a hallucination about a white salamander is simply embarrassing, right? But there's so much more to it in the story of Joseph Smith. Smith was steeped in black magic, treasure hunting, glass looking, divining, etc. So this letter wasn't even really surprising to church leaders. They have been hiding these facts about Joseph's early life for the entire history of the church.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the ultimate indictment. Is it's like, a lot of people online are, the church is this shows the church is innocent. They had nothing to do with this, and it's like, well, they thought there was a better than 50% possibility that this letter was real.
Yeah, well, they fell completely for it because it sounded dry. Like it's like, I can see that.
Yeah, it literally. Like it contradicted a few things in the sort of official story, but it really felt in keeping with like all of the original sort of magic of the founding of the church.
Yep. Yeah, and that the belief that it was probable that it happened and that the rank and file Mormons would believe it was terrifying to the church. And and that context didn't really make it into the documentary, which I found a little surprising. Aside from the church's gullibility, it never really explored the church's motivations for purchasing this stuff and trying to keep it hidden.
Right. They weren't buying it because they wanted to display it prominently for all to see. Right. They were buying it to tuck it away in the mountainside and never, ever reveal it to anyone. That's right.
And the same is true of the McClellan collection and the 116 missing pages in the Book of Mormon written down by Martin Harris. I don't want to recount those documents here. Go back and listen to our segment for that. And I would encourage that. But very little time was given in the series as to why these documents were potentially damaging, just that they were.
That was a glaring omission.
Yeah. In the case of the former, the McClellan collection, it would cast Joseph Smith in even worse light. And in the latter, the 116 pages, it could almost certainly prove that the Book of Mormon was completely made up. So
either that or change what Mormons had to believe forever.
Right.
Yeah.
If they believed that it was actually like the missing sealed portion of the Book of Mormon, whatever it said would have to be then incorporated into their theology.
I never thought about that. If they found the 616 pages, they would have to put it in the Book of Mormon. Yeah. What else could they do? That's interesting. One very small criticism, although, and I don't want this one to take too much away from everything, but I do think it was a fascinating nugget that for some reason didn't make it in. Sandra Tanner was featured, and she's a lifelong enemy of the Mormon Church. She was featured, but it didn't talk about the fact that her late husband, Gerald, who was also a lifelong enemy of the Mormon Church, was the only person who doubted the authenticity of the Salamander letter. He had more reason to believe it or want it to be true than anyone, and he doubted it.
Interesting.
That's right. And I remember they both found Hoffman very spooky.
Yeah, they found him spooky, and the White Salamander letter was just too cute by half. So that's just a thing that didn't make it. That's very minor. My second real criticism of the series is that it portrayed the forensic document examiners, George Throckmorton and William Flynn, as basically having cracked the case by uncovering the forgeries. This is not the way it went down. As I was watching the series, Episode 2 climaxed with those two discovering microscopic cracks in the Hoffman documents that did not seem to exist in documents unrelated to Hoffman, and that this was the moment that they broke the case. So compelling was that moment that I started to doubt myself and worry that I would have to do another Doug Was Wrong segment. Now, the truth is that those guys did find those cracks, and I was tempted to talk about that part of the story back in our segment. But some stuff had to hit the editing room floor. We all have to make our decisions.
Right.
But the cracks were not good enough to hold up in court and were not part of the charges against Hoffman. Any mediocre defense attorney would have made mincemeat of that evidence, right? Like, it's just too circumstantial. It's not provable. Anyway, the truth is the detectives Jerry Delia and Michael George were stalling in the case against Hoffman because of a lack of motive. They didn't know why Hoffman would do this thing. They thought he had done it, but they didn't have a motive.
And the thing is not the forgery, but the thing is the blowing people up. That's what they're after.
That's right. And because they weren't sure these things were forgeries yet.
They didn't have the juice for the forgery charges.
That's right.
Or they didn't know if they should or shouldn't think of them as forgeries.
Right. So they're kind of stalling in the case, and that's when the actual real McClellan collection was discovered in Texas. So Hoffman didn't believe it existed. He was in the process of forging it when it was actually found. That's this meant that one, Hoffman was peddling a fake document, that he was a fraud, and now you have motive, and that's when the case broke. So over the next...
they didn't even mention the actual McClelland.
I know, that was very strange. So the case cracked through that set of events, not through the discovery of those tiny cracks in the ink. Over the next few years, and based on Hoffman's confession, all his techniques were eventually recreated. And this was actually one of my favorite parts of the series, is they were kind of reenacting his various ingenious techniques. Of using,
just a couple of them, though. I wanted more.
I did too, but I mean, like using a vacuum cleaner to pull the ink through the paper, and using that electrical current to create ozone to expose the documents to that. Fascinating stuff. But he got away with all of that, right? He got caught for the murders and then for being discovered to have done that. It was old-fashioned police work and random chance that broke the case, not the forensic scientist. That was my biggest beef. It was like, hey, this feels a little like they're rewriting their mistake, but hey, that's me.
Yeah.
And to my last criticism, and one that, again, may have been motivated by a desire not to make the church look kooky, we'll never know, part of the plea deal with Hoffman was that he had to confess all his crimes so he could avoid the death penalty. Both his family and the victims had to accept this plea. Hoffman's father, if you'll remember, at first refused the plea deal because if his son had committed the crimes, his only potential path to forgiveness was to have his blood literally spilled on the ground by being killed by a firing squad.
Yeah,
which was a form of capital punishment still in use in the 1980s.
Right.
This was adherence to the Mormon belief of blood atonement that Uncle Mark talked about in episode 50. So one of the weirdest and most interesting turns in the entire story, that the prosecution and the defense team had to go to the Mormon church to have them convince Hoffman's father not to have his son shot, didn't make it into the series. I thought that omission was kind of baffling.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Because Hoffman's dad was actually one of the very compelling characters that they kind of just glanced off of.
He didn't
he was like, we need to see more. We need to know more about this guy. Because he was clearly like part of the stew that created the psychopath.
Yeah, I think he probably traumatized Mark in ways that ended up, because Mark, of course, as we know from Doug's report, became a huge enemy of the church.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. And so it would be interesting to explore that father-son pathology a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to show that even now there is context to be explored, Uncle Mark sent me an article the other day written by a Mormon woman named Meg Conley, exploring one of the enduring mysteries of the whole Hoffman saga. How did Hoffman manage to keep his wife from ever entering the locked room in their house where he performed his forgeries, kept his paraphernalia, and eventually built his bombs? Conley's very interesting point is that Mormon women are basically trained to stay out of locked rooms.
Yeah.
The priesthood of the Mormon church is basically a locked room to all women, and Mormon women are constantly told to be obedient and subservient to their husbands. So for there to be a room in her own home that was off limits to her on her husband's orders would not actually be that unusual at all.
Right.
It wouldn't feel so beyond the pale that she couldn't just accept it and move on.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. But so overall, I do recommend the series. I think it contributes a lot to the story, and it's very well made. But I do think it missed the mark a bit on why this whole thing really could not have happened in another time and place due to the strange history of the Mormon church and the efforts of its leaders to keep things hidden, and Mark Hoffman's motivation to try and topple the whole thing. So,
and Uncle Mark's motivation.
Also, true.
I'm right there with him.
But if you do watch it and like it, might I recommend our segment? So I'm really pleased that we managed to pack into 38 minutes what it felt like they weren't able to cover in 3 45-minute episodes, but yay us.
So like if you post about the murder among the Mormons, go ahead and recommend it to other people. Why not recommend our segment to everybody else?
Yeah,
they can hear.
Get us trending on Netflix.
So this is kind of the what underlies the entire enterprise here is I didn't know you knew the other filmmaker, Doug, and I haven't had any contact with Jared Hess in a very long time. He's a very funny guy, but I don't know what their current status vis-a-vis the church is.
Right,
and so I don't know if by omission or commission their prejudices, their particular feelings about the church made them want to protect it. If that's true, they probably never would have touched this as a subject.
Right.
Right? Because this is just bad. This just makes the whole culture look kind of bad, right?
Right.
So, but wonder,
certainly not as bad as it could have, because I think the more the more context you add in, the church comes out looking terrible. These are supposed to be prophets, seers, and revelators. They were duped. They were duped into purchasing stuff that's bananas because they thought it was true. That means they think, that means they have other. And there was, it's anecdotal.
It's because bananas is part of is cooked right into the cake there.
Yeah, truly enough.
Yeah,
and
that kind of folk magic was a completely believable reality for them.
And in their desperate attempt to seem less than crazy, they have tried very hard to hide the magical origins of the church from the public's view. That was motivating them to do this stuff. And so it just, the deeper the dive, the worse the church looks. And I just felt like, again, I think it's well made. I don't think it did anything egregious. I think it's part of the tapestry, but it's not a complete, story about what happened. So there you go.
We not only did we scoop them and get to it before they did, we did a better job. I'm willing to accept it.
Tune in next week when we are going to review the Great British Baking Show.
That's right.
Which I've never watched, but people love it, so don't at me.
All right, let's move on. Gentlemen, we every week talk in this time slot, in this portion of the show, about the wonderful people who decide to support our show. And I am ever so grateful. There's multiple ways you can do it. For instance, you could go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and rate us. Give us 5 stars, and better yet, review us, which is a very useful thing. And something that Shelnross did for us, which and I'm going to read their review now, which says 5 stars. Put down your shofar. That's the title. Unless you are trumpeting the glory of your uncles, Dan, Mark, and Doug, these delightful derelicts of delusion will disabuse you of your deities from all dimensions. Ooh. Dare to drown in their dramatic dioramas, but be warned, you might die laughing.
Oh,
that's some alliteration right there. That's awfully sweet.
Alliterative is always best, is what Doug always says, which I think it's a clunky saying, but whatever. Say whatever you got to say.
I've said it once. I've said it 1,000 times.
The other way, and boy, by the way, it's free to do that, to give us the 5 stars and to review us. So please do that. It helps us get the word out. The other way you can show your support for us is to give us your hard-earned money. And we have some folks to thank on that front also. So thanks. And we're each going to have to put in some work here. So Uncle Doug, would you please give a saint to Jay?
Oh, boy. In the spirit of rhyme, Jay, your very special saint is Saint Bananarama, the body slammer of Alabama.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's the patron saint of public access television attorneys, bus bench attorneys, and now, because we're living in the worst timeline, apparently a combination of the two, presidential attorneys.
Ooh.
There you go.
Wow. That's a good one. There you go. And Uncle Mark, you have a saint you need to give too, and I've forgotten who the name is.
Brian. I think we missed Brian, so Brian, I thank you for making us aware of that, and I hope the glory of this saint will make up for that. And of course, I guess I'll follow in Doug's rhyming tradition somewhat, and this is Saint Pant Stabber of South Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, who is the patron saint of anything that is unnaturally oblong, of King Kong, and of any VHS tapes featuring Ray Don Chong.
Wow.
How about that?
Amazing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Amazing. Not her dad, not Tommy Chong.
Not Tommy Chong, but Ray Don Chong, who we all got, America's sweetheart from Commando.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. And I need to do something for our final patron for the day, which is, and this is the name of the patron. In the karaoke system, the people are represented by two parties, the songs and the karaoke legends who sing them. Dun dun. That's the name of the person. I feel like that just saying that should be enough, but no, we owe them something. However, this person has written into us to request not a saint, not a heaven, but a eulogy. I will make it clear that is not how this works. We are not just bending over backwards for anyone who gives us some of their money.
We totally are.
We totally
kidding me?
will. But yes, a eulogy. Okay, fine. So, I didn't write anything out because this isn't a heaven. This is a saint. So here lies karaoke. We'll call them karaoke for short. Here lies karaoke. Everyone that knew them was blessed by their beautiful voice, their song stylings of such crazy hits as Alone by Heart and Man of Constant Sorrow from the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? They were the only karaoke singers in the country able to do Stairway to Heaven without everybody else being really, really frustrated and annoyed. That's how good they were. Rest in peace, and may there never be anyone in front of you in the karaoke in heaven. Amen.
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 Rest in peace.
If you would like to give us some of your hard-earned money, which I think obviously you would like to do that, please go to howtoheretic.com. Click on the support thingy. It takes you right there. It's super easy. You sign up. You get what you want. We get what we want. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, everyone wins in this scenario.
So thank you so much to all of our patrons, and let's move on.
Let's move on. Well, Uncle Doug.
Ahoy.
As we were just talking about before we pressed record, of all the races of people in the world, the one that really is the most problematic generally is probably the Irish.
Okay.
Is that a race?
Isn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know. But, well, they're trouble.
Goodbye, Irish listener.
They're trouble.
Oh, they know. They know what they've done.
Yeah.
They're not going to go
what
away.
you did. Go back to County Cork and think about it.
I like that we've descended into ranking the races. That's always a good place to go.
That never ends well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of our March Madness. we have brackets.
Listen, our Monday listeners, our dear and holy patrons, are going to catch this early. But for those listening on Wednesday, Faith and Begora, Aaron Gobra, Slancha, and all the other May the road rise to meet you cliches you might want, because it's St. Paddy's Day. So, top of the morning to you. Pro tip, nobody in Ireland actually says that. Wear some green, kiss somebody right on their blarney, and always after me lucky charms. When there's not still a global pandemic going on, the feast of the day of the patron saint of Ireland is a pretty good time here in the US of A. This tradition goes all the way back to the early 1600s, when an Irish vicar in then Spanish Florida held the first ever St. Patrick's Day parade, something that had never happened in Ireland. It didn't really catch on then, because Spaniards don't care that much about Patrick. So it wasn't until the mid-1700s that it came back. Boston led the way, holding its first march on the 17th of March. Its first parade. That's where I'm getting messed up here. Holding its first March 17th parade in 1737. New Yorkers started doing it in 1762. 10 years later, a group of Irish soldiers serving in the English army decided to fend off their homesickness by also marching in New York. The English army thus became everyone's favorite people here, and just a few years later, the colonies threw them a very big party. Anyway, since white folks wantonly snatched this land, the U.S. has always had a lot of Irish immigrants, and they used St. Patrick's Day as a way of communing with their heritage. And what better way to commune with your heritage than to celebrate a holiday with traditions that nobody back in the homeland ever did? So look, St. Paddy's Day is a Catholic feast day in the middle of Lent. It was not supposed to be a party. Sure, they would sometimes suspend prohibitions on eating meat so as they could feast, but traditionally the pubs would close. That happened until the 1970s. And it would mainly be a solemn religious affair.
At St. Patrick's Day.
No kidding.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a feast day for a saint. It's not a party. Well, fuck that. Irish folks were often treated like shit here. They were Catholics in a Protestant world. They were looked down on and largely kept out of lucrative jobs. So, St. Pat's became a time to get together and feel united, and to show their numbers to the world. It quickly went from a holy feast to the green vomit-smeared drunken shit show we all know and love today. It's it's been such a popular celebration here that it has bled over back to the old country. So if you're in Ireland mid-March now, you'll see green everywhere, even though the traditional color for St. Patrick himself was blue. And every pub will throw a crazy party just like we do here. Cities like Dublin now have multi-day bashes that involve music and activities and parades, but that's literally just them trying to live up to the expectation of tourists who used to show up dressed like idiot leprechauns, ready for colored beer and corned beef, only to find that none of that was part of the Irish tradition. They've literally changed their whole tradition to accommodate U.S. morons who want to get wasted and break their ankle trying to river dance. Everyone involved should be very proud. But who is this Patrick, this saint who stands for Ireland and everyone who vaguely associates with it? Well, let's get into that. You likely know a few things about St. Patrick already. The legends that surround him are woven into much of the celebrations that we haphazardly bumble through as we drink our way through his day. But come on. This is the How-To Heretic. If you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you likely already know that if we're talking about a saint, those things that you know about him are almost certainly bullshit.
Exactly.
So go ahead and get out your fact-check bingo cards, and we'll see later how much of our communal knowledge holds up. For an early medieval guy, we actually know quite a bit about Paddy Boy, or rather we know quite a bit about what he wanted us to believe about him, because most of our info comes from his writings. Letters to the soldiers of Coroticus, which was mostly a denunciation of the British treatment of Irish Christians. Who cares how they treated the heathen pagans? And, more helpfully, an autobiography called Confessio, which is Latin for something like declaration. We have no idea when or where he was born exactly, but it was somewhere in Great Britain, that's England, Scotland, or Wales, sometime in the 5th century. He was born into a somewhat prominent Roman family. This was toward the end of the Roman occupation of Britain, and they seemed to enjoy some status wherever they were. But while Britain was crawling with Roman Christians, Ireland was crawling with pagans. Well, maybe not crawling. The 3 centuries before had seen a pretty steep drop in Irish population. Nobody knows why, but there has been speculation that the Romans were kidnapping folks and taking them back to Britain as slaves. Not great. It's pretty much a terrible thing to do, but the Irish must have figured turnabout is fair play, because our boy Patrick's first trip to Ireland was occasioned at the age of 16 when he won a free trip across the Irish Sea as the compulsory guest / newly captured slave of a group of Irish raiders who attacked his father's villa. Strangely, Patrick didn't enjoy his time in captive slavery, though he hadn't been a very fervent believer back home, he suddenly found a compelling reason to pray to God. In Confessio, he says he would pray 20 times per day and another 20 at night, which When your whole life is compelled labor, I suppose muttering prayers about wishing your life was better is as good an occupation as any. 6 years, our boy Pat worked as a herdsman and prayed. And then, according to him, one night he heard a voice in a dream tell him to get out of there, which he didn't hear that voice every night?
I know, right?
Anyway, the voice said that there was a ship that could take him back to wherever the fuck he was from. No word on whether that voice mentioned that the ship was 200 miles away, but it was. So Pat snuck out and wandered eastward for a very long time until he finally found a port and talked his way onto a boat. After that, it was easy, just a short boat ride across the sea, another very long journey on foot, near starvation, another brief stint in captivity, and then boom, he was home. Home safe, he decided to pursue work with his newfound sense of religious fervor. After all, who wouldn't be grateful to a God who heard him begging for help, and after only 6 agonizing years of constant pleading, and then saved him by putting him through months of terrifying venturing alone in the woods with cutthroats and highwaymen at every turn, when that same God could have just prevented him from having been captured in the first place.
Right.
Anyway, he took up the priesthood. Now, maybe it was as he claimed, that he dreamed of, that the people of Ireland called to him to come back and convert them to Jesus, and so he followed his calling. Or maybe the higher-ups in the church were looking for people to send as missionaries to that terrifying island, and suddenly they had a guy who spent 6 years learning the language, so they just shrugged their shoulders and told him he had to go. Whatever the case, off he went, back to the Emerald Isle. Now, the legend of St. Patrick says that he converted Ireland to Christianity. That is, of course, stupid. There were over 1 million people scattered all over that very large island, and he was only one guy. Also, there were already Christians there. Before Patrick, Pope Celestine I, or Celestine Prophecy I, if you prefer the full name.
I recommend you don't.
Right? Had sent a guy named Palladius to be Bishop of Ireland. No word on what Palladius had done to warrant this punishment, which it almost certainly would have been for a Roman bishop. But you don't send a bishop if there aren't any Christians. The fact is that Ireland didn't really become Christian for at least a century after Patrick, like as a full thing. Mm. So what did Patrick actually do that was so noteworthy? Well, it seems that he was particularly adept at making friends with the kings of Ireland. At that point, Ireland was separated into lots of tiny little kingdoms, or maybe we should call them clan chieftains or sultanates. Anyway, every little area had its own bigwigs, and our boy Patrick became a master starfucker. I mean, this guy could talk his way into all the good parties. So, while he didn't convert thousands or likely even hundreds to Christianity, he got on the good side of lots of important people. He made it okay. So when he converted the king's nephew or that king's daughter, they didn't balk. Interestingly, that innovation may well have cleared the way for the Christianizing of the island over the next 100 years. So maybe Patrick was instrumental in that. Poor Irish bastards.
Less of a missionary and more of a salesman.
Well, what is a missionary if
True.
not a salesperson?
True. Yeah.
So basically, yeah, these poor Irish people had a perfectly good heathenism going, but one sneaky guy starts to make Jesus look hip and non-threatening, and you're ruined for thousands of years. So there you go. So that's about as much history as we actually know about the guy. But wait, you say, we know more than that about him. Ah, yes, we still have to get to snakes and shamrocks, don't we?
That's right.
I'm tired of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking Ireland.
That's right. So, yeah, indeed, the legends abound about our dear Patrick. So, yes, he is said to have driven all the snakes from the island. That would be a pretty cool miracle, considering how non-responsive most snakes are to even the most insistent human coaxing. And yet it is true that Ireland has no snakes. It is, of course, also true that there's no evidence that Ireland ever had snakes. They don't seem to have ever been on the island. There's nothing in the fossil record or anything like that. So, where does this legend come from? Well, most scholars think that it was a metaphor. It was in the fine Christian tradition, everybody that wasn't Christian was considered evil, and since snakes and serpents are a stand-in for the concept of evil throughout the Bible, it's likely that this legend was actually a reference to Patrick clearing out all of those nasty pagans, which he also didn't do, but he got credit for anyway. Then there's the legend of the shamrock. It's said that Patrick used the three-leafed plant to illustrate how to think of the Holy Trinity. 3 separate entities, but one whole. Now, if you're like me, this image doesn't help in conceptualizing the Trinity at all. Now I'm just picturing the Godhead as Monty Python's three-headed knight arguing with itself. The truth is that the idea that something is both 3 things and one thing at the same time is, what's the word? Stupid?
Stupid works.
Silly? Logically impossible? Whatever it is, no amount of botanical metaphor is going to help. It's just sort of a Fox News-esque platitude meant to be just enough that simple people can accept it, but not enough to stand up to any kind of deeper inquiry.
Well, you know that there's that one where they say, think of the Godhead like water. It can be vapor. It can be ice. It can be liquid. That one at least requires you to think for a second, right? This one, hey, it's 3 leaves on one leaf. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, that's not doing it for me, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, even that one, it's like, okay, but it can't be those same things, those 3 different things at the same time.
Right.
Like, you still can't be 3 things and one thing.
But it's like, you can't be 3 leaves in one leaf unless you're just one leaf with 3 branches. I don't know, fuck it.
Right, yeah, exactly. It breaks down pretty quickly upon inquiry. Anyway, look, none of that matters because there's no evidence that Patrick ever said it. That concept popped up centuries later, but since shamrocks are super Irish, people just started associating it with their boy. Here's a fun bit of trivia. Patrick lived in the 400s CE, but the Catholic Church didn't officially start canonizing saints until the late 900s. Before that, the concept of a saint was just a folksy notion. If someone was considered important to the local believers, he or she was their, scare quotes, saint. A saint by tradition and not by any sort of papal dispensation. It was literally just a popularity contest. Technically, the Catholic Church considers everyone in heaven a saint, but officially canonized ones, as we know, are extra special. So, to conclude, St. Patrick was never canonized a saint, wasn't Irish, didn't convert Ireland to Christianity, never drove out any snakes, said nothing about the shamrock, and likely wasn't even named Patrick. His color is blue, his feast day is during Lent, and the holiday everybody in the U.S. celebrates that bears his name is 100% a secular shit show that has nothing whatsoever to do with the guy it's named for, and everything to do with how much Americans love an excuse to binge drink and act silly. So, with that, I'll leave you with some very special St. Patrick's Day sayings that I found on a website called greetingcardpoet.com. Try saying one to a friend or loved one today. I'm sorry, I had to do these because it was literally, I was looking for something to say at the top of the thing and found this site, and it was just, anyway, you'll get it. The first one's pretty good. Here we go. Wishing you a pot of gold and all the joy your heart can hold. So, rhymey.
Nice.
It's got that pot of gold thing feels, Irishy or whatever. Don't worry, they get way worse. This one. Don't worry, be Irish. Greetings from this Irishman. Okay. For today, every green beer that you say no to, a little baby leprechaun dies. Happy St. Pat's.
Oh, my God. All right.
Happy St. Patty's. I'll drink a green beer for that.
Okay.
I'm just gonna keep going with these because I get a kick out of them.
Did
I don't care
Dr.
if you guys
Steve
are
Brule write these?
right. Yeah, I think so.
You dingus.
You ready? You ready, you turkey? Hope you have a very green St. Patty's with lots of lucky green wishes that all come true. It's a little clunky, that one.
Yeah.
This one's a little bit better, though not making any sense. If you were green, I'd still love you. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
And then
It's trying to be inclusive. I like that.
Sure.
Yeah. I like it. Then they got a little bit more sort of wistful in nature, I would say. The old pipe gives the sweetest smoke. I don't know if that's actually an Irish thing or what. This one I find utterly baffling. Your son is your son today, but your daughter is your daughter forever.
What?
St. Patrick's Day. I don't know that one either. 3 diseases without shame: love, itch, and thirst.
Love what?
Itch, like when you get itchy, you get a little itch.
All right.
We got 2 more. I'm just gonna go for 2 more.
Okay.
Believe me, I narrowed this field down dramatically. So just be glad I'm not reading all of the things. Here we go. This one's a really good one. I like this one a lot. 1 Guinness, 2 Guinness, 10 Guinness.
Okay.
That's the whole thing.
For a person with almost no familiarity with the English language at all, they do a pretty good job of writing these.
Yeah, not too bad. And then this one, pinch me. I can't believe I'm lucky enough to be celebrating St. Patrick's Day with you. So there you go. The sentiments of a poet for St. Patrick's Day.
Well, I'm glad you found that one because Ireland, definitely doesn't have any famous poets of note.
Yeah, no poetry has ever come out of Ireland, so we had to go with the internet.
It's a poetryless island, that's for sure. So
I think St. Patrick drove the poets out.
He drove the poets out, but he left the lyricists. Yeah. So he was never actually canonized by the church?
Nope.
Huh.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Okay.
Happy not Saint, not Patrick's Day.
Go out and do all the things that have nothing to do with anything with him.
Go dye something green. Apparently the Irish, even the corned beef and cabbage thing that we all do here in the States, Irish weren't really into corned beef. What's funny is the story is somehow the corned beef was invented in England, and then the Irish got really good at making it, but then it would ship back to England because they couldn't afford it in Ireland.
They'd just take it, yeah.
So when the Irish came to the U.S. and corned beef wasn't expensive, then they embraced it, and it became like a big deal here in the U.S. among American Irish people, Irish Americans. But yeah, now it's apparently a little more popular in Ireland, but it wasn't. All the things that we think of as like how to celebrate Ireland during St. Patrick's Day are just us. That's just us stuff.
You're welcome, Ireland. Here's how to feel about your ancient characters. So,
everybody go out there, but don't stay home. We got to do one more St. Patrick's Day inside, and then next year we can catch all the diseases that aren't coronavirus.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, happy St. Patrick's, everyone.
Well, friends, that is it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
And if you worship a saint that there are no true facts about of any kind, you can leave us a voicemail about it at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. And you can also wish me a top of the morning on Twitter at howtoheretic.
And thanks, as always, to our incredible patrons.
And thanks, as always, to our mammoth hunter, Cody Layton, for editing the show.
And thanks, dear friends, to you for tuning in.
Bye, friends.